It started with a detour. Highway 43 had been shut down for maintenance again, and my GPS rerouted me through some back roads I'd never driven before. I was heading home from a client meeting in Oakford, trying to make it back before sunset. The route it gave me wasn't on any map I knew, but I followed it anyway. The sun had started to dip below the hills, and the forest lining the road grew dense, like it had never been trimmed back. The trees leaned in toward the narrow asphalt, as if whispering to each other above my car. That stretch of road made me feel small, like I didn't belong there. Then I saw the sign. It was old, the paint almost completely worn off, but I caught the faint outline of a name, Welltown. No population number, no county, no welcome, just Welltown, and a rusted arrow pointing left. I paused. My GPS had glitched and was spinning, and I hadn't seen another car in at least 20 minutes. I should have kept driving, but something about that sign pulled at me. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the silence that felt too loud. So I turned left. The trees thinned out, revealing a long stretch of road that ended at a wooden archway. It looked like something out of a Western movie, with crooked beams and peeling paint. A hand-painted banner hung across it, barely legible in the twilight. Founders' Day Celebration, June 3rd. Today was June 3rd. My headlights swept over the entrance as I slowly rolled in. The town opened up in front of me like it had always been there. A central street lined with storefronts, vintage cars parked neatly along the curb, and not a single person in sight. Street lamps buzzed to life one by one as the last of the sun vanished. They cast a warm, yellowish glow over the buildings. All of them looked like they hadn't changed since the 1950s. At first, I thought it was some kind of historical village or maybe a movie set. But when I opened my car door, the warm breeze that hit me smelled like fresh pie and wood smoke, too real to be staged. I stepped out and called, "Hello." No answer. I walked to the nearest building, a diner with a flickering neon sign, Millie's Eats. Inside, everything was spotless. The booths were polished, the jukebox humming with a slow jazz tune. A plate of steaming mashed potatoes and meatloaf sat on the counter. No one in sight. And yet, the food was warm. I backed out of the diner slowly, heart thudding. Across the street was a barber shop. The rotating pole was spinning. Lights were on. Another step closer, and I saw a pair of scissors resting in mid-cut on a mannequin's head. Except it wasn't a mannequin. I realized the skin had tiny pores. There were even tiny whiskers on his cheek. The man in the chair was real, but frozen. His eyes were open, staring at nothing. His hand rested on the armrest. He wasn't breathing. I stumbled back out onto the street. That's when I heard the music. A soft piano tune echoed from down the street, deliberate, slow, like someone playing a lullaby with too much emotion. I followed it, too shocked to do anything else. The sound came from the town square. There was a small stage set up beside a gazebo, and on it was an upright piano. A woman in a yellow sundress was seated at it, her back to me, her fingers gliding over the keys. "Ma'am," I called. She didn't stop playing. I walked closer. Something was wrong with her hair. It shimmered unnaturally, like it was painted on. And her dress, it didn't move with the wind. When I reached the steps of the gazebo, she stopped. Dead silence. She turned slowly and smiled. Her face was too perfect. Eyes glassy, skin flawless. But it wasn't makeup. It was wrong, like a wax figure that had learned to grin. "I'm glad you came," she said. Her voice echoed oddly, like it bounced back too fast. I ran. I didn't look back as I sprinted to my car, jumped in, and floored it back toward the archway. But when I reached the end of the street, there was no road. Just trees. Dense, dark forest, like there had never been a road there at all. And above me, the old wooden sign now read, "Welcome back." I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. My car was parked where the road had vanished, or, more accurately, where the trees had grown over it, like something had sealed off the way out behind me. I tried backing up, driving forward, even honking in desperation. But there was nothing. No road. No sound. Just trees. I kept the engine running for a long time, hoping it was a glitch or a dream or something that could still break. It didn't. Eventually, the gas needle dipped low, and I was forced to shut it off. I locked the doors, cracked the windows, and sat in total silence, watching the archway that had vanished behind the trees. And then, just before sunrise, the street lamps turned off. All at once, a bell rang in the distance. Ding ding, ding ding. Church bells, soft but purposeful, as if summoning something. Then came footsteps. Measured, dozens of them. I ducked low in the seat, heart hammering. Through the windshield, I saw people walking down the main street. Men, women, even children. They moved with perfect coordination, like they were part of a synchronized play. Their faces were eerily calm, their eyes forward. They blinked far too rarely. One man pushed a bicycle. A little girl carried a skipping rope, though she didn't skip. An older woman held a pie like it was fresh from the oven. No one spoke. They just walked toward their shops and homes like actors returning to their marks. One of them turned toward my car. A man in a gray vest and round spectacles. He tilted his head, then began walking toward me slowly, purposefully. His eyes never left mine. I panicked and threw myself into the back seat, hiding beneath an old blanket. I held my breath as footsteps approached the driver's side window. Tap. Just once. Then silence. When I finally peeked through a corner of the blanket, the man was gone. My window, however, had a smudge, like someone had leaned in to breathe on it. That's when I knew I couldn't stay in the car. I had to figure out what this town was. More importantly, why I was here. I left the car and walked quickly but quietly down the street, avoiding the townsfolk as best I could. Some greeted each other with mechanical waves and flat smiles. Their conversation sounded scripted, like an old radio play. I passed a hardware store and saw a man at the register slowly turning a wrench over in his hands. His eyes were open wide. Too wide. The farther I went, the more the buildings began to glitch. That's the only word I have for it. A sign would flicker between names. A window would briefly show a reflection of someone who wasn't there. The town wasn't just old, it was unstable. Eventually, I reached the town library. It looked abandoned from the outside, overgrown with ivy, but something told me it was the safest place to hide. Inside, the air was stale and cold. The walls were lined with thousands of books, but none had titles. The spines were all blank. I pulled one down and opened it. The pages were filled with the same phrase over and over. Stay inside the story. Stay inside the story. Stay inside the story. I dropped it. A voice behind me said, "They'll notice you soon." I turned. A girl, maybe 18, stood in the corner between the shelves. Pale skin, dark hair, real fear in her eyes. She wasn't like the others. "You're not from here," I said. She shook her head. "Neither are you." I took a step closer. "What is this place?" The girl looked around as if afraid the books were listening. Welltown wasn't built. It was written. Someone created it. It's a story that never got finished, and now it's looping. My skin went cold. "Like a storybook?" She nodded. "Everyone here is a character. They don't know it. But if you stay too long, you become one of them." I stared at her. "How long have you been here?" "Since 1997, she said softly. "There used to be a bus route. I fell asleep, missed my stop, and ended up here." "Why haven't you escaped?" Her face darkened. "Because every time I get close, the town changes." Before I could speak again, the door to the library creaked open. 3 townsfolk entered. The man in glasses, the pie lady, the little girl with the skipping rope. The girl beside me grabbed my arm and whispered, "Don't run. Just follow me." She led me deeper into the library, behind a false shelf that opened into a hidden stairwell. We descended in darkness. At the bottom was a narrow stone corridor. Dusty, claustrophobic. "What is this?" I asked. "A piece of the story they forgot to finish," she replied. "Down here, things don't work the way they're supposed to." The hall led to a small underground room, candlelit, stone walls covered in strange writing. At its center was a desk, and on it, a typewriter. Old, black, and still warm. The girl looked at me. "It writes new pieces of the town," she whispered. "If you figure out who the author was, you might be able to rewrite your way out." I stared at the keys. The ribbon still moved slightly, like someone had just finished using it. But before I could ask another question, the door above slammed open. Footsteps echoed down the stairwell. "They found us," she whispered. "Hide. Now." I crouched behind a shelf as the girl blew out the candles. And in the pitch black, I heard the sound of a skipping rope hitting stone. Tap, tap, tap. Then a voice, flat, childish, called out, "You're not in the story yet, but you will be." The air in the hidden room turned icy. I stayed crouched, not breathing, as the skipping sounds drew closer. The girl, her name was Marley, I'd later learn, didn't move either. She seemed to know these sounds too well. Tap, tap, pause, tap. A child's rhythm. Too slow to be real. Too exact not to be practiced. Then, silence. We waited. Minutes passed. My muscles cramped. The stone beneath me felt like it was pulling heat from my body. The air itself was off, like it didn't want to carry sound. Like the place existed sideways to reality. Finally, Marley whispered, "They left. For now." We both rose slowly, cautiously. The typewriter in the center of the room had begun to hum, like it was alive. I stepped toward it and saw a fresh sheet had been loaded into the roller. But no one had touched it. The keys began to type by themselves. Chapter 9, The Stranger Finds the Rewrite Room. The carriage dinged and shifted. New lines appeared. He stands in the dark, heart pounding, unaware that something behind the wall is listening. I froze. Marley stepped beside me, reading over my shoulder. "We need to stop it," I whispered. "Can we?" "You don't stop it," she said. "You bargain with it." I turned. "With who?" She walked to the wall where strange glyphs had been scratched into the stone. "The town has a mind now. Or maybe a soul. Every unfinished story becomes unstable, and this one's been stewing for decades." I paced. "How many people are trapped here?" "At least 24 that I've seen," she replied. "Some of them are fading, forgetting they were ever real." I stared at the typewriter. "You said we can rewrite our way out." "How?" She didn't answer. Instead, she opened a crate beside the desk. Inside were old newspapers, photographs, and notebooks. One of the papers had a headline. "Local writer declared missing. Arthur Bellamy's last novel remains unfinished." "Arthur Bellamy?" I asked. She nodded. "He built this place. Or tried to. But it was too big. Too complex. The manuscript was never finished. They say he went mad before it was done. And the town just became real?" "Not all at once," she said. "It began as a thought experiment. A place to escape to. But something latched onto it. Gave it shape. It wants to complete the story, even if it means rewriting you into it." She handed me a journal. Bellamy's name was scrawled on the inside cover. The entries were fragmented, talking about characters resisting, about rules he couldn't control anymore. They speak to me when I sleep. My creations. They want structure. They need me to keep writing or else. Or else what? Suddenly, the typewriter dinged again. We turned toward it. A new sentence had appeared. "The stranger and the girl will not leave." Not willingly. The next page must begin now. I stepped back. "It's watching us." She closed the journal and whispered, "We have to go." We exited the rewrite room and crept back into the library. The light outside had shifted again, that weird orange hue of sunset, even though we had just passed sunrise. "Time isn't right here," Marley said. "It moves how the story needs it to." Back on the main street, the town looked wrong. The angles were sharper. Buildings had shifted slightly, like a dream reconfiguring itself. A mailbox now stood in the middle of the street. A lamppost leaned sideways. And then we saw them. The people. Frozen mid-step. Every single one. Their heads slowly turned in sync as we passed. Marley grabbed my wrist. "They're reading ahead." "What?" "They know what happens next. They're ahead of us in the draft." We ran. Down the street, past the gas station, past the glowing diner. Everything flickered now, even the signs. One marquee over a theater read, "Coming soon, your last chapter." We ducked into a boarded-up convenience store. Inside, the shelves were bare except for one item, a cassette tape in a clear case labeled, "Narrator Notes, Bellamy." There was a player nearby. Against better judgment, I pressed play. A man's voice crackled to life. I tried to delete them. The characters that resisted. But they come back. They always come back. Especially the ones that knew they didn't belong here. The girl from the bus. The stranger from the road. I wrote you both, even if I don't remember how. I don't know who you are anymore. but you were too real to erase. The tape clicked. I turned to Marley. He meant us. Her eyes were glassy. I think we're the ending. What? I think this whole town is waiting for us to finish it. Suddenly, the windows outside shattered inward. Glass sprayed into the aisle. From the street came the same skipping rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. And the voice again, now deeper, older. You don't get to leave a story once it starts. Finish the page. Marley and I ran through the back door, out into an alley where the walls closed in on both sides. At the far end was another sign, not wooden, but digital, glitching wildly. It flashed. Rewrite point ahead. We turned the corner, and there it was. Another typewriter. This one fused into the center of a stone fountain. A bench faced it. Next to it stood an empty coat rack with Marley's yellow jacket from earlier, the one the piano woman had worn. My head spun. Is that? Marley stepped back. That's not mine. But the town was giving her a choice. I moved toward the typewriter. What if I just write us out? I asked. She hesitated. Then you become the author, and they'll never let you leave. I looked around. The townsfolk were gathering again. Slowly, calmly. Some held signs that read, "Welcome, writer. Stay. Finish US." I sat at the bench. My fingers hovered over the keys. Then what do I write? Marley whispered, the truth, or the lie they want. But either way, once you write it, it becomes real. My hands began to move. And behind me, I heard the skipping rope stop, a child's breath on my neck, and a whisper. Make us real. I typed. At first, I didn't know what the words would be. My fingers just moved, like something was nudging me, not forcing, but suggesting. The way a dream leads you somewhere you don't understand until you wake up. He sits at the fountain, watched by the town that should not be. The writer who was never meant to be born of this place. The typewriter hummed louder with each word. He begins to understand that the town does not want escape. It wants closure. It wants to end. Behind me, the townsfolk waited, some standing perfectly still, others swaying slightly like trees in the wind. Their faces looked almost human now. Almost. A little too smooth, a little too clean. Then I heard Marley's voice. Stop. I looked up. She was standing a few feet behind me, eyes wide. You're doing exactly what it wants. You're feeding the draft. But I'm writing us out, I said. I'm building an ending. She stepped closer. That's the trick. It doesn't want the ending. It wants the act of almost ending forever. It traps you in rewrites, in edits, in maybes. Bellamy never escaped because he never stopped typing. The realization sank in like cold water down my back. If I kept writing, the story would never end. It would keep me here, as long as I kept creating. I stood up and stepped away from the typewriter. The moment I did, the townspeople began to stir. They didn't speak. They didn't rush. But I could feel their disappointment. Their bodies slouched. Their smiles faded. The illusion started to break. One of them, the girl with the skipping rope, stepped forward. She looked at Marley, then at me. Then she spoke for the first time. You're both the glitch. Her voice was wrong. Too layered. Like multiple voices in one throat. You weren't written. You wandered in. That makes you a crack in the spine of the book. Marley whispered, we can still leave. No, the girl replied. But you can choose what kind of character you want to become. The townsfolk took a collective step forward. Something about the space warped. The buildings bent slightly toward us. The ground felt unsteady, like we were standing on a slowly turning page. Marley grabbed my hand and pulled me away from the typewriter. We ran again, not because we had a plan, but because stillness meant surrender. Through the narrow alleys, past the glassy-eyed butcher shop, through the school where every chalkboard repeated the same phrase over and over. Character is destiny. We burst into the town's old firehouse and slammed the doors shut. Inside, dust floated in thick shafts of light. The air was heavier than outside, like it remembered smoke. I've seen this place before, Marley muttered. In a dream. We searched the firehouse for anything useful, weapons, maps, notes. Instead, we found a mirror in the back hall. A huge, cracked mirror that covered most of the wall. And it didn't reflect us. Instead, it reflected versions of us. I stood still as I watched my reflection, not move like me, but ahead of me, saying something I hadn't said yet, holding something I didn't own. wearing clothes I'd never seen. Different drafts, Marley whispered. Different versions of us the towns tried to write. The mirror shimmered, and I saw Marley, but smiling, dressed in yellow, playing the piano in the town square. That's not me, she said. But her voice trembled, because part of her wanted it to be. From the floor, I picked up a loose fireman's axe. Not because I thought it would protect us, but because in stories like these, someone always grabs an axe. I turned toward the door. We finish it, I said. How? I looked back at the mirror. By burning the draft. We made our way back to the library. By now, the town was less real. That's the only way I can describe it. The colors had faded. The edges of buildings looked sketched instead of solid. The people stood in place like unplugged animatronics. They watched us, but didn't move. Like they were waiting. The typewriter room was still there. Still glowing faintly. We walked in, this time knowing what we had to do. The original journal, Bellamy's, was still on the table. I opened it, flipped through the pages until I reached the end. There, in shaky handwriting. If anyone finds this, I'm sorry. I wanted a place of peace. A place where the story never ends. But I see now, no ending is its own kind of hell. I tore the page out and threw it into the candle. The flame caught instantly. Then we burned the others, one by one. Journals, drafts, old newspapers, photos. The more we destroyed, the more the town screamed. Not out loud, but in the walls, in the foundation, in the air. Cracks appeared in the stone. The typewriter sparked, coughed smoke, then began typing furiously on its own. You do not get to unwrite US. We were almost real. We were almost alive. Marley picked up a chair and smashed it into the keys. Metal flew. The paper caught fire. The ink hissed. And above us, from somewhere deep in the town, a new bell rang. A final one. Low. Long, heavy. The sound of something closing. We rushed outside. The sky was wrong now, just blank. White space. As if the background had been erased. The buildings crumbled like paper models. The people froze mid-step, then slowly folded, like pages in a book being turned backward. And the archway, the one I'd entered through, was back. I ran for it. Marley beside me. As we crossed under the arch, the town behind us let out one final sound. A child's voice, far away. Don't forget us. Then silence. And darkness. I woke up in my car. Morning sun burned through the windshield. Birds chirped. A breeze ruffled the leaves. I was parked at the edge of a familiar road, Highway 43, now fully open. No sign of Welltown. No arch. No dirt road. Just highway. I sat in silence, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Had I dreamed it? I checked my phone. No signal. No GPS. No recent calls. But the car clock was moving. The world was moving. And there, on the passenger seat, lay a single yellow ribbon. Marley's. I stared at it for a long time before starting the engine. The car drove like nothing had changed. Like no town had eaten time. Like no typewriter had tried to absorb me. But everything had changed. Especially me. I drove straight home. Showered 3 times. Slept for 13 hours. When I woke, I expected it to fade, like dreams do. But the details only sharpened. I remembered the people. Their glassy eyes. The typewriter that wrote my name. The mirror that showed me versions of myself I had never lived. And Marley. I remembered her most of all. That night, I Googled everything I could. Arthur Bellamy vanished in 1993. Former pulp horror author. One unfinished novel, the Welltown manuscript. The manuscript was never found. But a photo surfaced in one article, a grainy black and white picture of Bellamy at a book signing. In the background, partially blurred, stood a teenage girl with dark hair. She looked almost exactly like Marley. A caption read, "Signing at Oakford Library, June 1997. The same month Marley said she'd vanished. I slammed the laptop shut. I couldn't explain it. But I knew one thing, something from that town had come back with me. Not physically, not in my car, but in me. Over the next few days, I tried returning to normal life. Grocery store, work emails, calls from my sister. But I began noticing strange things. Reflections lagged behind. When I typed emails, the words on the screen would occasionally shift, as if something corrected my sentence. I'd write, "I'll meet you at noon." and the screen would change it to, "I'll meet you at the usual place." No matter how I deleted or retyped it, the correction would return. I unplugged the computer. That night, I heard typing from the next room. I lived alone. The sound was faint, like keys being struck slowly. Thoughtfully, I crept toward the guest bedroom. The door was closed. The typing stopped as my hand touched the doorknob. Inside, nothing. No typewriter. No laptop. Just a cold breeze, and on the desk, a single page. Typed. Centered. Plain. "You didn't burn the last copy." I left the house the next day. Drove until I found a rural motel with no internet, no cable, no electronics. I stayed there for 3 days. And during those days, I tried not to think, not to dream. I scribbled by hand in a notebook, testing to see if my own words still obeyed me. They did. For a while. Until I flipped a page and saw a sentence I never wrote. "She's still waiting at the piano." I slammed the notebook shut. No matter where I went, the story followed. I started looking for Marley. Not the girl I met, the real one. If she existed. If she ever left Welltown. I posted on forums, paranormal sites, Reddit threads titled "Unfinished Places and Lost Stories." Weeks passed. Then, an email. No sender. No subject. Just a single sentence. "Meet me where the draft ended." Attached was a map. Hand-drawn. The roads were familiar. It led me back. Not to the town, but to the woods where I first saw the signpost. I went. The road was overgrown. The dirt path barely visible. But I followed it. After an hour of walking, I saw her. Sitting beside the broken fountain. No typewriter now. Just ashes where it had been. Marley. She looked the same. Maybe a little older. A little tired. "You made it out," I said. She smiled faintly. "For now." "I saw your reflection. The one in yellow. The one at the piano." "I know," she said. "That's what the story wanted me to become. A permanent piece." "But you didn't," I said. "No," she said. I held on. "But it's harder now. The real world doesn't feel real anymore." I sat beside her. Silence stretched between us. Then I asked the question that had been gnawing at me. "Why me?" She turned. "Because you saw the sign. That means something. That means part of you was already looking for a place like that. A place between endings. I didn't ask for this. None of us do." A wind rustled the trees. Far off, I thought I heard a piano key. Just one. Low and distant. Marley stood. "There's one thing left." "What?" She held out a notebook. "It's yours now." I opened it. Blank pages. Crisp. Ready. "This is how it ends," she said. "No more typewriters. No more rewrites." I looked down. "And if I don't write?" She smiled. "Then it writes you." I went home. Put the notebook on my desk. Stared at it for hours. Then, finally, I wrote. I took a wrong turn into a town that wasn't there yesterday. I came back, but I'm not sure I ever left. And as I closed the cover, I saw it, just for a second, in the mirror above my desk. The girl in yellow, sitting at the piano, waiting for the next page, for the next writer, maybe for you.